What's up, motherfuckers? Hans Niemann has been eliminated of the World Cup, and his dream of reach the candidate and be world champion for the moment is over. So maybe the next cycle. But this year he have no option to qualify two candidates because the Lorenzo Lodici eliminate him in a very good game in the tiebreaks. So let's analyze the game. So in the format of this tournament is first two classical games, and if they tied 1-1, later the following day they play tiebreaks or of a rapid control. And if they still draw in the tiebreaks, they still playing but without less time in the clock. But the first tiebreaks was with 15 minutes and plus 10 seconds in the clock. Okay, e5, e45, uh, knight f3, knight c6, and Lodici games with the Spanish with bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, and now Lodici decides to go with sword castle, bishop e7, and now the main move was rook e1, and other normal move here was d3. There are the two main moves, but here Lodici decides to go for the line with bishop c6. It's interesting to now the fight between the knights and the bishops. Of course, it's better to have the bishop pair, but Black have a worse pawn extractor thanks to this double pawns. So later, white is going to break on d4 one day, and is going to have a pawn majority on the king side. That's the white plan here. So rook e1, defending e4, knight d7, and now c3. Good move by Lodici. His idea is just play d4, c5, and d4. c5 is a good move to see to undouble the c pawns, to trade the double pawns. d4, e takes, c takes, and here was stronger to just play c takes d4. That's the logical move after when you play c5 is because you want to trade your double pawns. So c takes d5 here was normal move, I think. But I don't know why Hans doesn't take that. Here was the best was c takes, queen takes or castle, and now you can develop the pieces with, for example, rook e8 and c6. Later the queen is coming to b6 and the knight to c5. So, for example, to examine a little bit this position, here black have now this undouble pawn, so now black repair his pawn extractor, but white have more space in the center. The position is close to be equal because black have the bishop pair to counter the huge white center. But okay, white is fine with the knight because white have all the control of the center. So that's the idea of the white position. Just take the control of the center. Okay, sword castle, knight c3. And here again, Hans should take on d4 and play knight b6. But okay, he still without take on d4. And now very good move of Lodici a4, putting pressure there. And here came there's another mistake of Niemann. Here he should just play bishop b7 and develop the pieces. And okay, you can sacrifice this pawn because here after queen takes, no sorry, yeah, here you can defend this pawn, for example, or take on e4 simply. Knight here and just play queen b7. So the b5 pawn is defended because later the a4 pawn is hanging. So, but he played b4, which is a bad move, because after knight d5, just white is going to take the black bishop pair. And I told that the black advantage in this position is the bishop pair, and the white advantage is okay, first the pawn extractor, but later it's going to be this that white have more control in the center. So if you lost with black your only advantage, who is the bishop pair, now white have the advantage because white is still having more control of the center. So bishop b7 and white takes the bishop pair. And now white is better because yes, simply because have more control on the center. And this knight is bad place on d7. But yes, white just have a little bit more development and more control of the center position. Here he played d5. Oh, okay, it's an interesting move because the machine doesn't like, but there are only one move to refute with black, and it's not easy to play. Okay, positionally d5 looks like a good move, but here f5 can refute the move d5. Here e5 and f4, important move. And can look like these two pawns are too strong, but okay, are no pawns helping, and it's not an easy position. I cannot explain why this position is equal because it's so difficult. But for example, these two pawns are too strong, two are taking space. there are no pawns defending the white central pawn, so this pawn can be attacked in the future with rook d8, and this pawn can suffer a little bit. For example, if white have a pawn on c4 and a pawn on f4, position is completely winning, but the pawns are not so safe. And here it's 4, queen b3, and the position is equal. But of course, f5 is a difficult move. 5 f4 is idea not easy. But the Matsi prefer here or bishop f4, just develop the bishop or bishop d5. But okay, d5, and here Niemann, he doesn't understand that he should play f5, and he play a normal move like rook e8. And now, after bishop d5, white have the advantage. And okay, I'm going to pass more or less fast the following moves because I think that it's clear that here white have the advantage. The d5 pawn controls so good the b7 bishop. That's why f5 is so good to try to open the bishop. I told in many videos that it's a very good technique to open the bishop that your opponent doesn't have. So if you have a light square bishop and your opponent have not a light square bishop, just try the light square bishop. That's what I recommend. Try the bishop that your opponent haven't. So okay, let's still with the game. 1 second. Okay, bishop d5, queen d6. But like I told you, now it's clear that white is better because the b7 bishop is blockaded by the d5 pawn. The rook is well placed here, especially the white center is so strong. And he have the pawns in the different color of his bishops. So his bishop control the dark squares and the pawns control the light square. And apart the black still having these double pawns. So queen d6, queen d2, a5, bishop f4 is like I told, white control the light squares and the pawns control the light squares and the bishop control the dark squares. Queen b6, rook ac1, rook ad8, and queen c2. Now he's coming with the knight to c4 to blockade c4. Because, okay, here with this move, black wants to play c4 and open the queen and advance the pawn majority. So here white just came to blockade the black pawn. So, and here white is completely winning this position. Rook c8, b3, just stopping the pawns. Queen f6, bishop g3. And finally, black tries to, yes, tries to break the white center. But okay, why just push the pawn? The only problem is that now this pawn is in the same color of the bishop, but okay, of course, a pawn on d6 is always so strong. Rook c d8, now knight f3, because if not, black could came with knight d5 in one moment, and the d6 pawn could be weak. Queen g6, knight h6, queen e6, knight f5, improving the knight, very good maneuver. c4. Okay, finally, black managed to advance his c pawn, but now this move gives a hold on d4 for the knight. Queen f6, e5, very strong move. Because here this doesn't work because at the end of the line, white have knight c6, attacking the queen and the rook. So queen g6, queen takes, pawn takes, b takes. Now I have a pawn up, c5, knight c6, rook a8, knight a5, second pawn up. But okay, the a4 pawn is going to fall. The only black hopes is that there are opposite color bishop and there are more draw tendencies. But the position is winning, knight b3, rook a4, f4, still taking space and defending the a5 pawn. Now this bishop can came to f2 to attack c5. Very good idea. Rook a3, rook b1, defending the knight. And finally the bishop came to take on c5. And after the c5 pawn is going to fall, later the b4 pawn is going to fall. So rook here, take, bishop c5. You cannot take because now this pawn is promoting. So that's a little bit small tactic. Bishop c4, bishop b4, and now we have two extra pawns. Like I told, if this bishop instead of being dark square bishop could be was a light square bishop, the position could be completely winning. But okay, his position is still being completely winning, but black have a small yes, practical chances of draw thanks to the opposite color bishops. So of course, the position is completely winning, but black have some hopes of defend the position. Bishop f5, bishop b7, rook b1, king f8, and here Lodici select the incorrect plan. He plays the bishop on c7, who is not good, because okay, talking about concrete move here, black have f6, and after f6 it's not easy to progress with white because okay, if you If black can take on e5, here these two pawns are is not going to be so easy of advance because both are in the same color of the own bishop and black have the full control of the light square. With white, you want to maintain the f pawn to one day play g4 and f5. That's the white dream. And still having the control of the light squares. The problem is that after f6 here, black is going to take the full control of the light squares. That's why I don't like that. Here, better ways to play with white here could be, for example, first rook b7, placing the rook active, king e8, and now king with the king. I'm moving all the time the rook with black because with black I didn't find any aggressive plans. So now h3, taking the control of the light square is important. Our opponent have the light square bishop, so we want to take the control of the light square with the pawns. g4, rook c6, and now the king on e3. Okay, could look fine, but it's not making nothing on e3. So now we're going to start a new plan with the king to go to g5. King f3, king g3, king h4, and king g5. So all of these plans are fine, but the most important thing of the position is that we have these two pawns controlling this bishop. That's the most important thing. And rook b7 in the first move was so important just to take the control of the first rank. Here, the principal idea of the other idea of rook b7 is that black cannot play f6 because e6. Bishop takes and rook e7. So for that reason, I really like rook b7 because it's avoiding f6. So okay, king e8. Niemann missed the idea of f6. Rook a1. Now bishop c6 was stronger. Okay, he played bishop c6, who looks normal. King f2, king d7. And here, again, first, the most important is take the control of the 7 rank, activate the rook, and later we're going to make the idea of h3, g4. Lodici goes directly with h3, g4 idea. Rook a8, bishop a5. But see the difference. Now the rook is... No, the bishop first is pinned. You cannot move the bishop because your rook is hanging. That's a thing that we don't like. And the rook, you cannot move the rook because your bishop is hanging. So white have now so passive the pieces and black have so active. So I don't like the Lodici plan. And here again, was stronger by Niemann f6 to try to defend the game. Instead of that, he still without understand. King 6, the problem of king 6 is that now white can play f5. I suppose that Niemann missed that move, of course, because if not, you are not going to play king 6. G takes, king d7. Okay, you cannot take one of its pawns because d6 is coming then and promoting the pawn. So king d7, and now Lodici play king e3, who looks like so natural move. I think that is so difficult for a master, and apart in a classical game it's going to be so difficult too. But okay, this was a rapid game to find here the correct move. Here the best move was king g3, but why? Because after king e3, the best move by black is so difficult. It's g5. Incredible move. Now fixing the pawn on h3 and now black's threat could be rook h5, rook h3 but it's so difficult of course to find that over the board. And it's not easy for white to create counterplay here because the rook and this bishop is still bad play here. So rook h8 by Niemann, bad move. Now king d4, bishop and like I told you, with king g3, 35 we have king g4. That's a huge difference. Okay, rook h8, but bad move by Niemann. King d4, bishop b7, bishop b1. This is again with many mistakes, but of course it's a rapid game, so it's more or less normal. Bishop g3, f takes, king e5, rook e8. Here king d4 was stronger. Now he goes to the king side. Interesting that 5 moves ago was better to go to the king side instead of go to the center, and later is the opposite. Here was better to go to the center than go to the king side. But the problem of okay, king d6, king g5, and here Niemann missed again because okay now can look like the problems of black are less because he managed to take the both white central pawns. But the problem is that the king position and the bishop position is still a little bit bad, and it's going to have problems on if the rook enter to c7. So that's why here black should play king d7 instead of king d6. And if rook d1, here king c8, good move. Rook c1, rook d8, and black is more or less defending the game. Of course, black is still having problem because, okay, white have a pawn up, this king is so active, but black have chances to hold the game. King c6 is a very bad move because after rook c1, now your king is so far from the king side. So it's so difficult to defend the pawn on the king side and these two pass pawns with the king in China. So h4, good move. Bishop c8, bishop c7. He repeat. And here Lorenzo missed the correct idea, who was just rook c7, followed by rook d7 and take the pawn. Lorenzo during the game he suffered so much to just place the rook on the 7th rank. He never understand that he should place the rook there. King b7, and here he just should return to d6 to play sorry, to play rook c7, but he played bishop d4, but he missed a tactical idea of Niemann with rook d4. The problem is that if you take here, now bishop f5, king takes here, rook takes, reaching a draw theoretical position. So for that reason, he tried rook c8, king takes, and bishop g7. He goes for that. Who now it's a draw, but of course, black is still having problems to defend the position. So king d7, h5, king e7, a6, king f7. Looks like black is close to the pawns, but it's still not easy. Bishop f6, king g8, king g6, rook g4, bishop g5, and now comes the decisive mistake of the game, who makes that Lodici advance round and Niemann be eliminated of the candidate. Here Niemann plays the move rook d1, which is a losing move. When I watching this game on live, because I saw that the game is still being drawn, but I don't understand why. Because okay, if rook d1 lost, looks like the position is losing, but here the move rook d2 or rook d3 will draw the game. Let's understand why. First, we're going to see why rook d1 was just lost, because after f6, now white is threatening f7, so rook f1 defending the pawn, bishop a3, e3, sorry, and the idea of bishop e3 is that the bishop on e3 is defending the square g1, and the same time that he's coming to e4. Rook f3, and now h7, king h8, f7, and if you take that with the rook, here bishop d4, checkmate. And okay, if rook here, just bishop g5, and here Niemann just resigned. But let's analyze why rook g1 was bad and why rook g2 was better, or rook g3. Because after, for example, rook g2, f6, rook f2, the same idea. Here, bishop e3, black is still having the option of play rook g2. The bishop on e3 doesn't cover the g1 square. So that's why rook g3 or rook g2 could draw the game. That's okay. Niemann has been eliminated of the World Cup. Lodici was playing a great tournament, so let's see if he can advance more rounds. Bye bye, motherfuckers.